In 2021, Lake Mead on the border of the U.S. states of Nevada and Arizona reached a record low in terms of water level. This man-made reservoir along the Colorado River supplies drinking water to tens of millions of people across California, Arizona, and Nevada. This is just one example of record-breaking water lows across the American Southwest and the Colorado River. Just 200 miles to the northeast along the Arizona-Utah border lies Lake Powell. Just like Lake Mead, Lake Powell is a man-made reservoir that has been seeing record-breaking lows in its water levels for years. And to the even bigger concern of residents of the American Southwest, the only major natural river in the region that supplies waters to the millions of residents in Las Vegas, the Phoenix metro area, and Southern California, no longer reaches its natural delta in the Gulf of California, in Mexico. The Colorado River is the literal lifeline for this region, with around 90% of California's supply of the river being used in agriculture alone. So how has the Southwestern United States succumbed into this massive problem? It's no secret to anyone who's visited this region of the United States that it's, simply put, desert. Southern California and much of Nevada are dominated by the Great Basin and the Mojave Desert, the driest desert in North America. In Arizona, nearly the entirety of southern and western Arizona, including the metro areas of Phoenix and Tucson, lie in the Sonoran Desert, the hottest desert in North America. Combined, these three deserts cover 320,977 square miles, a little larger than the entire country of Namibia in Africa. However, this entire region averages anywhere from 4 inches of precipitation annually at the lowest elevations to around 14 inches of precipitation in the various mountains that dominate the region. These mountains also serve to lower rain levels even more. When clouds carrying moisture meet the tall mountains found in the western U.S., the mountains push the clouds upward and over the mountains. This means that the clouds lose most of their moisture, so when they finally make it over the mountains, there's no more rain left. This is called a rain shadow in the Sierra Nevada mountain range in eastern California, with peaks as high as 14,000 feet above sea level, casts a massive rain shadow over much of Nevada. Understandably, this makes the Southwest the driest region in the United States. Despite this fact, the Southwest is also one of the fastest growing regions in the United States. Despite being completely landlocked cities in the middle of dry and hot deserts with no access to the ocean or large rivers or lakes, Las Vegas has seen an average 0.89% growth rate, while the Phoenix metro area has seen an average of almost 1%. Phoenix is in a rather interesting spot when it comes to population also. With the city population hovering around 1.7 million people, Phoenix is the 5th biggest city in the United States, behind Houston and ahead of Philadelphia. The top 5 biggest cities in the U.S. are New York City, LA, Chicago, Houston, and Phoenix. New York City lies where the Hudson River meets the Atlantic Ocean in the Upper Bay and the Lower Bay. Los Angeles lies on the opposite coast on the Pacific Ocean and is home to the Port of Los Angeles, the biggest seaport in the United States. Chicago is adjacent to Lake Michigan, which has access to global oceans through the St. Lawrence River. Houston is located near Galveston Bay on the Gulf of Mexico. All of these cities have a very important factor in common: access to the ocean. Maritime trade has always been the cheapest and easiest form of transporting goods from one place to another, so for centuries, having access to the ocean has been perhaps the biggest thing that people look for when establishing a metropolis. Phoenix, however, is located in the middle of the Sonoran Desert in central Arizona and is hundreds of miles from the nearest big body of water. The only rivers that flow through Phoenix, the Salt River and the Gila River, dry up for most of the year and fail to reach the Colorado. This means that the transport of goods through water is nearly impossible, so all trade has to be done through highways and rail. To add on to this, Phoenix is by far the hottest major city in the United States, having a recorded high temperature of 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Because so many people are moving to cities like Phoenix and Las Vegas, this means that the water demands in these cities are rising as well. This has created a massive cascading effect. Take Arizona, for example. Arizona's only major river that carries water throughout the year is the Colorado River. Using a series of canals called the Central Arizona Project, Arizona has moved water from the Colorado River uphill towards population centers like Phoenix and Tucson. However, California and Nevada also use the Colorado River. These competing interests mean that there is less water all around as these states increase their water use. Because of this, Arizona needs to look elsewhere for water. This leads to 40% of the entire state's water supply coming from groundwater. This comes with its own set of problems, however. Because of the lack of substantial rainfall in the region, the groundwater supplies are not being replenished as fast as they're being used. This creates a supply and demand problem where there's more demand for water than there is supply. If groundwater wells were to dry up completely, all of these states in question would have to reconsider how they use the Colorado River. Overall, the desert atmosphere in the American Southwest presents a massive danger to its water supply. And people aren't even the biggest use of the Southwest water. That title goes to agriculture. In California, 90% of its water intake from the Colorado River is used for agriculture. With the Colorado River's water tables dropping rapidly, less and less water every year is available for agricultural use. This is bad news for the entire country. California is one of the biggest agricultural producers in the entire world, producing approximately 1/3 of the entire supply of vegetables in the United States and 2/3 of the country's fruit and nut supply. California also provides around 19% of America's dairy, and California's agricultural industry is almost 13% of America's total value of agricultural output and totals almost $55 billion US. The United States and the rest of the world heavily depends on California for agriculture, and with worsening water supplies from the Colorado River, things are not looking good for Californian agriculture. California itself is sort of an outlier in the Southwest. In 1922, the Colorado River Compact was established in which 7 states, Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, Wyoming, Nevada, Arizona, and California, all divided up the Colorado River. The river was divided into 2 basins, the upper basin and the lower basin. Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming make up the upper basin states, while California, Arizona, and Nevada make up the lower basin. Of the water supply from the lower basin, 58% of it is allocated to California, which amounts to 4.4 million acre-feet. Arizona was allocated 38% of the water, and Nevada was allocated the remaining 4%. California has its own water struggles, however, outside of just the Colorado River. California is the most populous state in the U.S., with a population of nearly 40 million people, greater than the entire population of Canada. Of this, over 20 million people live in just Southern California, a majority living in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. Ironically, this is also the region of California that sees the least rainfall. In fact, Los Angeles sees an average rainfall of just less than 12 inches per year. But why? Coastal cities always receive more rainfall than inland regions. For example, San Francisco averages around 24 inches of rainfall per year, whereas Sacramento gets 18 inches a year, which is still more than Los Angeles. For a more extreme example, Seattle on the coast of Washington averages 37 inches a year, while Spokane in inland Washington receives 17 inches a year, 20 inches less. Los Angeles is extremely dry along with the rest of Southern California. These sunny days are what make it such a desirable place to live for millions of people. However, this contrasts with other Sunbelt cities like Tampa and Miami, which receive 51 inches of rainfall per year and 61 inches respectively. And it all has to do with water temperature. While it is true that cities like Tampa or Miami are farther south than Los Angeles, LA is on the same latitude as Wilmington, North Carolina, and Wilmington still receives more than 58 inches of rainfall per year. The answer is that the Pacific Ocean is much cooler than its Atlantic counterpart. The average annual water temperature in Los Angeles is 62 degrees Fahrenheit, compared to around 70 degrees Fahrenheit in Wilmington. This is because in the northern hemisphere, ocean currents travel in a clockwise rotation. This means that cooler waters are pushed from the north down the coast of California, and on America's Atlantic coast, warm waters are pushed up from the tropics. When this cold water meets the dry and hot air from the desert, very little water is evaporated, resulting in very little rainfall across coastal Southern California. California's very interesting geography also plays a role in the worsening water situation across the state. California, as a whole, receives lots of rainfall and snowfall during parts of the year. However, this precipitation doesn't fall evenly across the state. 75% of the rainfall that California receives fall in Northern California, where wind blowing in from the Pacific Ocean hits the tall mountains on the coast. This forces the winds up and over the mountains. Unlike Southern California, however, the air temperature here isn't as hot, so a lot more water is evaporated and poured down on the mountains. This, along with the cooler temperatures from the Pacific Northwest, serve to greatly increase the amount of rainfall the region sees. However, as these winds and clouds begin to travel south into California's Central Valley and beyond, the air temperature rises and the tall mountains force the clouds to lose their precipitation. This means that while these tall mountains in Northern California receive tons of snow and a substantial amount of rain, the rest of the state falls behind. Ironically, California's major population centers, including San Francisco, Sacramento, San Diego, and Los Angeles, all lie south of this point, meaning they receive substantially less rainfall and precipitation as a result. To make things even worse, a vast majority of these precipitation falls during the wetter winter months and in the summer. And to make matters even worse for California, the amount of water the state receives heavily depends upon the weather patterns for that year. During a La Nina winter event, it is warmer and drier across Southern California and wetter in the Pacific Northwest. An El Nino event results in much more rainfall and increased risk of flooding in Southern California. However, a La Nina weather event can happen for up to 3 months at a time, which would result in 3 years of less rainfall across much of California. This leads to more droughts and less precipitation overall, which means that the environment is drier as a result. Because the West Coast is extremely dry, this means that more extreme weather events like wildfires and droughts are more likely to happen. In 2022, almost 66,000 wildfires were reported that burned nearly 7.5 million acres. Of that, over 7,000 were reported in California. This is because of the unusually dry air temperatures in the state. This means that the forests are extremely dry, which leaves a lot of dead and dry trees and other brush in the forest. This means that when lightning strikes during the summer, fires have pretty much unlimited fuel and can end up growing extremely big and engulfing everything in their path. These fires damage thousands of homes every year, cause massive evacuations, and endanger hundreds of people. And what's not helping the fire situation across California and much of the Southwest is the constant state of drought. This can also be attributed to the lack of rainfall, which leads to natural reservoirs and rivers running dry. As climate change continues to take hold on our planet and this region continues to grow hotter and drier, droughts like the one California has been suffering in for years will only continue to become more frequent and more harsh. For California, at least, there are a few potential solutions for the water crisis. One solution is desalination. Desalination is the process of turning seawater into drinkable freshwater by removing salt and other minerals. The desalination process is done in desalination plants. Currently, Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries that face water shortages lead the pack with desalination. In October of 2022, California approved a $144 million desalination plant. This plant would be able to convert 5 million gallons per day from seawater into drinking water. This plant would join the 12 other desalination plants across the state that try to provide more drinking water to the people. But to the concern of environmentalists, the desalination process comes with some drawbacks. In order to desalinate ocean water, you must use a massive amount of energy in order to just process it, which only serves to burn more fossil fuels. But the even bigger problem when considering desalination is the effect it has on the local marine life in the area. A byproduct of desalination is brine, an extremely high concentration of salt water that is dumped back into the ocean. Because brine is denser than normal salt water, it sinks to the seafloor where it destroys the ecosystem and lowers oxygen levels and spikes salt contents. This brine also raises the salinity of the ocean, which disrupts marine life. Brine also mixes with the chemicals in the desalination plants, and when it's released back into the ocean, it pollutes the environment around it and harms the marine life. As of desalination technology right now, around 50% more brine is pumped back into the ocean than fresh drinking water is being produced. Luckily, as desalination technology advances, the brine levels are decreasing as a result. As of 2019, 69% of desalination plants use a new type of technology called reverse osmosis membrane technology. You see, the old type of desalination, as I discussed previously, is called thermal desalination. Thermal desalination heats salt water into pure vapor, which leaves brine and other chemicals as a result, which is pumped back into the ocean. Reverse osmosis desalination pushes ocean water through a series of filters at high pressure, which removes the salt and other chemicals. As our technology continues to improve this decade and beyond, and desalination also continues to improve, we can hope that more solutions to our worsening water problems will appear. At the same time, however, we need to remember to preserve and conserve what we have today so we can ensure it will be there in the future. California is perhaps one of the most proactive states in water conservation because for the Golden State, the situation is the most dire. Southern California, which is home to large population centers like Los Angeles, Orange County, and San Diego, is home to roughly 20 million people. With so many people in such a dry environment, there is more of a need to conserve water for the masses. And so, the state has invested over $8 billion since 2020 into storing, recycling, desalinating, and conserving water. According to California's Governor Gavin Newsom, California will embark on a journey to store 4 million acre-feet of water, recycle 800,000 acre-feet of water, along with capturing stormwater and desalinating it. Los Angeles County has imposed several water restriction laws, including limiting outdoor watering to 10 minutes per location 2 days a week. In Arizona, the state announced that Arizona is below its 1957 water usage levels because of conservation by people and agriculture. Arizona also has 5 times the amount of water saved as the state has used, with 13.2 million acre-feet of water stored and underground in total. It's amazing to see how people are reacting to the worsening water crisis and what they're doing to conserve it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the Global Archive. Videos like these take lots of hard work and research, so I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.